This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
China hosts its first conference on dialogue of ancient civilizations in Beijing. Sudan's military council and the opposition alliance agree on a 3-year transition period. And concerns mount in Burkina Faso over increasing attacks. Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live and I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Also coming up in the programme. In business, Kenya's biggest lender by assets, KCB Group, injects nearly $9 million into its East African markets. And we have an exclusive look at a new technical school to train engineers for Egypt's first nuclear plant. China's first ever conference on dialogue of Asian civilizations has started in Beijing. More than 2,000 officials and representatives from 47 Asian countries are participating. President Xi Jinping addressed the event, emphasizing the need to further promote exchanges and mutual understanding among different civilizations. CGTN's reporter Zhou Yun has the story.
Building community with a shared future through enhancing exchanges and mutual learning among Asian civilizations. Delivering a keynote speech at the opening ceremony, Chinese President Xi Jinping said that human civilizations have become richer and more colorful through exchanges and mutual learning. President Xi emphasized the different civilizations are equally rewarding and the relations between them in the modern world should be addressed in a peaceful and friendly approach. And he said there should be no clash of civilizations as long as people are able to appreciate the beauty of them all.
文明只有姹紫嫣红之别，但绝无高低优劣之分。
There are only different cultures, no superior or inferior ones. Those who think their races or cultures are better and try to change or replace other cultures are wrong in their mindsets and are doomed to fail.
Evolving for thousands of years, Asian civilization has deep roots in the lands and has been enriched by other civilizations through communications. President Xi put forward 4 proposals, including treating each other with mutual respect and equality, creating fertile ground for all cultures to bloom, keeping an open mind to foreign cultures, and innovating to catch up with the change of times. He also said the development of Chinese culture is a good example of open communication between different peoples.
中华文明是亚洲文明的重要组成部分。
The Chinese culture is a vital component of Asian civilizations. It has been developing with the principles of inheriting tradition, innovation, and inclusiveness. The Chinese people have always embraced the philosophy of befriending our neighbors and being at peace with all foreign nations.
President Xi emphasized that today's China is not just China's China. It is also Asia's China and the world's China. China in the future will embrace the world and contribute with open mind and dynamic culture. Living in a diverse and multilateral world, many people say that various systems and cultures can and should coexist. Different as we might be, an open attitude and enhanced communication mechanism will offer us a more dynamic path to embrace diversity and building a community of shared future for mankind. So, CGTN, Beijing.
Buddhism is one of the world's oldest religions, and over the past 2,000 years, this belief system has been adapted to local conditions and has become part of the Chinese civilization. So, what are the key values of Buddhism, and how does this ancient religion remain connected and relevant to the modern world? CGTN's Zhou Yun has the story.
Bathing the Buddha with sacred water, one of the traditions to celebrate Buddha's birthday. For Master Zongxing, this ritual is not only a way to show gratitude, but also helps purify the inner world. After nearly 3 decades of devotion to Buddhism, Master Zongxing says that he believes wisdom and mercy are at the heart of the religion.
那佛教讲的这个智慧啊，不是我们一般社会普通。
Wisdom here is not only about being smart, but for people to live with no self. Mercy, if explained in a simple manner, means bringing people happiness and lessening their pain.
把自我不仅是降低到最低。
Each year, hundreds of thousands of people come to worship at this temple. They may come with different wishes, maybe for wealth or for health, but they all seem to have one thing in common, which is longing for peace and tranquility in their hearts and souls.
我们今天人物质生活非常。
People's material lives have become much more abundant now, yet they aren't happier. That's why I always emphasize that life quality isn't just about leading a material life, but a spiritual life as well. The Dharma in Buddhism can help us strike a balance between the two and provide guidelines for living a happier life.
From the most up-to-date speeches delivered by Chinese President Xi Jinping to the catchiest slang from the internet, Master Zongxing is familiar with the latest trends in contemporary China.
微笑是最好的美容剂嘛，是不是？
Master Zongxing says that the sense of openness and compatibility is what makes Buddhism rooted in China and helps the religion to thrive in this new era. And he believes that the spirit is key to helping various religions coexist, as well as allowing different civilizations to flourish together.
如果说每个文明之间互相是挑刺儿，
There will be conflict if different civilizations repel each other. On the contrary, they should communicate with each other, learn from each other, and appreciate each
互相
other.
包容。
This is the way to realize peace and stability in the future.
那个和平和安宁的这个梦想。
Buddhism is a spiritual faith and set of practices that have developed over a 2,000-year period, and it is now embraced in this country with 5,000 years of history. Chinese culture has endowed Buddhism with new meanings, while the wisdom rooted in this religion has also helped the civilization to grow and prosper. Zhe Yun, CGTN, reporting from Fayuan Temple, Beijing.
To other international news now. Let's head over to Sudan, where the Transitional Military Council and the Opposition Alliance have agreed to a 3-year transition period. According to Lieutenant General Yasser al-Atta, a member of the TMC, a final deal should be reached shortly. Both sides have agreed to form a 300-member legislative council. The opposition, Declaration of Freedom and Change Forces opposition, is set to hold 2/3 of seats on the Legislative Council. Both groups have yet to agree on who will hold a majority in the Sovereign Council, which will act as the top tier of power. This comes after months of protests and the deaths of 4 people during protests on Monday. Well, for more on this, we can now go to Dura Gambo, who is a local journalist in the Sudanese capital, Khartoum. Thank you very much for joining us. As we've been saying, Sudan is getting closer to a transition deal. What more can you tell us about the agreement between the Transitional Military Council and the Declaration of Freedom and Change Forces opposition?
Thank you very much. The biggest step in this agreement is to agree for a parliamentary system in Sudan, and the opposition will take 2/3 of the legislative council seats. This is the biggest change in this deal. We think it's great to reach this deal in these days after this massive attack against the protesters and people in this system. So this is a good step in the way to go to a civilian government.
Okay, so you say it's good.
All protesters.
Sorry, you say it's a good step. Let's talk about these civilian protesters. Are they likely to respond to this new deal on the transition period? And do you think they will stop their demonstrations now?
They are okay with this deal because it's a step as I said, it's a step forward to get our civil government. It's not all we need. It's not all people need, but it's a good step on this way. When you get this civil government, you will get more opportunities to do more for civil system in Sudan.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for that analysis. That was Dura Gambo, a local journalist in the Sudanese capital, Khartoum there. Well, meanwhile, Sudan's Transitional Military Council has formed a joint committee with the Declaration of Freedom and Change Forces Opposition Alliance, as we've been saying, to investigate the targeting of protesters. The TMC said the joint committee was set up to thwart any attempt to break up a sit-in at the Defence Ministry using violent means. Gunfire rang out in the capital into the night on Monday, which analysts say was a move to disrupt demonstrations there. The protesters have been keeping sustained pressure on the military, calling for a swift handover to a civilian authority. Well, the demonstrators have been camped at the sit-in outside the Defence Military since April the 6th.
It has also been agreed that the transitional period should last 3 years. The first 6 months will be dedicated to signing peace deals for stopping war in our dear country. We also reassure everyone that we are investigating everyone who has tampered with the blood of these great people.
There are 3 power structures: an executive council, which will be shaped in agreement with the military council, and the Declaration of Freedom and Change Forces, a ministers' council which will be voted in through the DFCF, a legislative council, 67% of which will be from the DFCF. The other 33% will be appointed after talks with the Executive Council.
Well, for more on this, we are now joined by John Gachier, a veteran journalist and expert on Sudan affairs. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
What's your take on this Transitional Military Council and the declaration of the Freedom and Change Forces Opposition Agreement on the transition period?
Thank you. For me, the first thing is that for both parties, that is the civilian, the opposition and the military, they are all fighting what you call a rearguard action, because they are facing a lot of pressure from their supporters, but also from what we call the old established order. What do I mean? The opposition as it is right now does not have what we call the old political system in Sudan leading this. This is a new, shall I say, a very new and fluid
Yes,
party.
you were saying earlier that it's very fluid.
Fluid, yeah. And it's bringing in, newer players onto the scene. The military itself is also trying to be able to kind of hold back what would call the old Bashir military order, so to speak. So for both forces and for both groups, it is a rearguard action to try and maintain and lead this. It's a very interesting development in Sudan, and everybody is hoping that this will be able to give a complete change to what is happening internally.
Let's talk a bit more about this transition period. The Military Council wanted a 2-year transition period, but it seems that the country is likely to go for a 3-year period instead. Is this likely to be received well by the civilian protesters?
I think the civilian protesters have to perhaps strike a deal. They hoped for a 4-year and the military wanted a 2-year. So perhaps a 3-year, the leadership of the civilian protesters have to sell the idea that this is a middle of the road thing, not to try and alienate the military, so to speak. So there would be some grumbling, that's for sure. But I think it would be the best deal in the circumstances.
Okay, it seems like a long period. What's your take on the proposed power sharing agreement, having the opposition alliance with a majority of the seats in the Legislative Council?
Now, that for me, Karen, that is perhaps a bigger elephant in the room, because the military has made it very clear that they will concede that. However, they insist on taking the lead on the Sovereign Council, which is the, so it's a kind of a power sharing deal where the military is willing to create some kind of, an attempt to bring in on board the civilian, but at the same time, they really want to keep the power by being the supreme. So it will be a fairly contested power arrangement, and I think over the next 3 years, there will be a lot of issues that will pan out, whether then the civilians will be able to outmaneuver, so to speak, and the military whether the military will also perhaps be able to kind of elbow out. So it's a game of wait and see. It's an interesting period, and as I was saying, we're saying this, for me, perhaps the key thing here is, will this in Sudan turn out perhaps to be a replica, perhaps a better replica of what had happened in Egypt when Mubarak fell, and then there was a civilian government, and finally, ultimately, the military took over. Now, that is an interesting dynamic, and possibly how the civilians play their cards very well. They might perhaps avoid a similar situation that had happened in Egypt, and possibly the military is also trying to be able to use this up to buy time, and then possibly when the situation has calmed down, then again, there are so many dynamics out and open at the moment.
Absolutely. As you say, it's a game of wait and see. Thank you very much for coming in your analysis there. That was John Gachier, a veteran journalist and expert on Sudan affairs. Well, now we are revisiting our top story. China's first ever conference on dialogue of Asian civilizations has started in Beijing. Well, for more on other activities of this important gathering, our reporter Wu Guoxie is at the Bird's Nest in the Chinese capital, Beijing. Guoxie, tell us what's happening now at the carnival venue.
All right, this is the side passage to the stage, and a lot of performers will gather here first and then to the stage, which is just right there. Behind me you see a lot of performers, some of them very young, because the theme of this carnival is the celebration of youth and the dream of Asia. Of course, this carnival will be given performances by performers from China, from Asia, and even from the world. Of course, there are a lot of celebrities. And talking about celebrities, we have one honorable guest, which is a very popular figure here beside me. This is a famous pianist, Mr. Long Long. And say hi to our audience. Okay. Welcome to our show. We were just wondering what will we play in this carnival?
Yeah, so I will play the opening. And there's a really nice song. It's almost like as Asians we're together. I think that's the title of the song. And they will raise up the piano like kind of like 5 meters high. So I actually get a best view of the house because I'm going to start playing. And then I will see such an incredible view of many orchestras. And also with every nations coming in into the stadium with their national flags. It's really cool. And then I also like the music. It's kind of like with a lot of folk music and from different part of Asia. And it's very tasteful. It's very tasteful music. And this is actually my 5th time playing in the Bird Nest. And this stage is going to be the biggest stage. Can you imagine? Half of the stadium will be this gigantic stage. Oh my God, I never seen such a big stage in my life.
Wow, yeah. It's very impressive. You've been playing a lot of occasions. What is different, or what's making you feel different from this carnival performing it?
Yeah, I think this is a very, very important festival because this is a conversations between different civilizations in Asia. And I think the best part of respect to each other's culture is to open our heart to have a open conversation. And today you will see many of the great artists from not only China but all over Asia, and even Andrea Bocelli is coming. You're my wonderful friend from Italy. So really, this shows the great bridge between people here and to the other other places in the world. So I really wish the greatest for this wonderful event, and I hope we will make many new friends between Chinese and to our wonderful world friends.
Wow, you're making us looking forward to it much more than before. Thank you so much for joining our show. I wouldn't waste your time because you were at the top of the show and you need to go back to play.
Prepare to have a different
wow.
look.
Thank you. Mr. Lala is very busy, so I have to let him go.
Okay.
Say bye-bye. Okay, bye. And let's keep our live because okay, a lot of people are following Mr. Lang Lang to get a signature. As we continue our live, we have 2 more guests. As we say just now, a lot of Asian performers will be given us performances on the stage, and I have 2 more beautiful ladies. Now we can speak to them. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Ploy. I'm from Thailand. I'm really excited to be a part of this carnival. Yes.
And your name?
Hello, my name is Nomon Bilek and I'm from Mongolia. I'm a student at Beijing Foreign Studies University.
So from Mongolia and from Thailand. What performances will it be given?
A bamboo dance.
Bamboo dance.
Bamboo dance.
Yes.
What does it look like? Can you
okay.
show us?
Okay. Let me show you.
Okay.
It's something like this.
Yeah.
What we're doing is almost like welcoming the people to watch the show.
Yes.
Yeah.
So with the bamboo there, it'll be more complicated, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So, as young people, do you feel this carnival very different and very excited?
Yes.
Yes, very.
Yeah. Especially for me, who wants to have a dream of working in the UNESCO and with cultures and arts. This is a great opportunity for me to experience such, event.
Okay, so say one sentence to our audience that your performance is a must-watch.
Yes, you'll be seeing 200 foreign students dance together and welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
We'll be watching and enjoy your performances later.
Okay.
Well, as we've seen some of the just a clip of the performances to be given tonight, or this carnival will be different from Euro performances because it's a carnival style and it will emphasize collaboration. So, as Lang Lang has said, the opening song will be the biggest collaboration as tens of thousands of people will sing the song Our Asia together. And there are some other performances. My impression of this carnival, I can use at least 3 words to describe it: color, passion, and harmony. Color, I mean the stage and the costume. It's a collection of a lot of bright colors and constantly making you feel very passionate. And passion, of course, these people are all already given you a sense of passion, right? And of course, these young people are very energetic. And also harmony. When you see the flags waving on the stage, when you see the smiles and all the beautiful elements together, and you would definitely feel a sense of uniqueness, but also harmony. There's a Chinese proverb saying, 美美与共，天下大同. When the uniqueness are understood better, and harmony will prevail in the world. So this carnival is definitely something you wouldn't miss. Okay, back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. That was Guo Shi there at the Bird's Nest in Beijing, where the Dialogue of Asian Civilizations is taking place. That's the first ever conference. We are going to a short break now. Don't go away, lots more to come, including concerns mount in Burkina Faso over increasing attacks targeting churches. And we have an exclusive look at a new technical school to train engineers for Egypt's first nuclear plant.
For look at some economic data out of the country, the country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
Perina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed.
And this is something most of us are very excited about.
we bring you news that's changing perspectives.
Reporting from Nairobi City Center.
News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Burkina Faso, and the country is dealing with a string of militant attacks on churches. The latest attack on Tuesday killed 4 people in a Catholic church. Here's more on the increasing insecurity in the country.
In the span of 2 weeks, Burkina Faso has witnessed 3 separate attacks on churches. The latest attack on a Catholic church in the country's north is raising more fears. Christians make up about a quarter of the Burkina Faso population. Muslims and Christians have long had a peaceful coexistence.
Already the first attacks on civilians were unpleasant to see, and now they are going after places of worship. This can raise tensions between religions, and it is deplorable. This has to stop right now.
The Burkinabe people must be very vigilant because these people have failed in every respect. They are attacking churches and they are now trying to sow conflict between the religions in Burkina Faso. But we will always stand tall.
Burkina Faso has been dealing with a rise in terrorist attacks since 2016. But experts worry the string of attacks on churches could spur a dangerous retaliation.
Là, il faut donc s'inquiéter.
We must now worry about this development because as long as it remained between the defense and security forces and the terrorists, this threat was quite understandable. Now that the community and religious components have been touched, there is a high risk not only of a backlash. And secondly, there is a risk of a lasting conflict, and where the difficulty is greater here is that the issue of attacks on Christian religious buildings can only be resolved through the fight against terrorism and not by trying to target this aspect alone.
Burkina Faso is part of the Sahel G5 Joint Task Force, which seeks to fight militancy in the Sahel region. Astatal, CGTN.
Meanwhile, thousands of residents have fled their village in northeast Nigeria's Borno state, fearing renewed attacks by Boko Haram after a recent raid by the jihadists. The residents of Mulai village poured into the city following a raid by Boko Haram militants last week, in which 6 people were killed and dozens of homes were burnt.
Local officials report that many in the north of Borno state have fled into the city Maiduguri, and the few that remain are preparing to join them. The consequence of a long drawn-out season of insecurity. Now many of the 9,000 residents of Mulai village have fled, and the rest say it's no longer safe to call home because Boko Haram attack and kill at will. The displaced are now taking shelter in camps, with others lodging or renting around the city.
We're going to find anything, even a tent to live our life there in Maiduguri, because we have nothing, no food to eat and no shelter, even our mobile phones. They destroyed everything.
The presence of troops in the outskirts of the village has not reassured residents. The exodus of villagers into camps in Maiduguri could worsen the already strained humanitarian crisis in camps, and close to 1 million displaced people have taken refuge in Maiduguri, with tens of thousands living in poorly kept displacement camps in the city, reliant on inadequate food handouts from aid agencies. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
The Democratic Republic of Congo says it has laid down plans to wipe out the Allied Democratic Forces militia and its affiliate ISIL from the country's eastern region. The announcement was made by Congolese Interior Minister Basile Olongo. It comes a week after ISIL claimed responsibility for an attack on a military base in eastern DRC. CGTN's Chris Ochemringa has more from Kinshasa.
The DRC's North Kivu province has been racked by conflict for decades. Humanitarian agencies estimate that more than 100 armed groups operate here. The latest group to claim a foothold in this mineral-rich area is the Islamic State. Last week, the group claimed its fighters attacked a military base in Bunduguya in eastern DRC. The DRC Interior Minister confirmed the attack.
The recent attack claimed by the Islamic State is true because they've been working closely with the Ugandan Islamist militia called the Allied Democratic Forces in eastern DRC.
The attack is the third that the Islamic State has claimed in 3 weeks. Congolese authorities say they are now ready to flush them from the country.
We are going to chase all those armed groups from the DRC. We call on the international community to join us in this war against terrorism. It shouldn't be neglected.
The country's vast mineral resources, coupled with a weak government presence in the east, has led to the emergence of dozens of rebel groups. But one Congolese analyst doubts that the Islamic State is operating in the DRC.
La plupart des rébellions qui nous attaquent, ce sont les Rwandais, les Ougandais.
The past conflicts in eastern DRC have been fought by rebels from neighbouring Rwanda and Uganda. I find it hard to believe that Islamic State fighters travelled all the way from the Arab world to set up base here.
But the Islamic State has worked with local militant groups in other countries to impose strict Islamic rules. The attack claimed by the Islamic State comes a month after Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi warned American diplomats that the group could seek to establish a caliphate in the DRC. He asked the US for military assistance in fighting the Islamist group. But that assistance hasn't been provided yet. Now the government says it's ready to get rid of the fighters. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
To North Africa now, where a new technical school has opened to train engineers for Egypt's first nuclear plant. CGTN had exclusive access to the first of its kind nuclear school in the Arab world. Let's now take a look.
Russia is building Egypt's first peaceful nuclear power plant in the Mediterranean city Al Daba. Some engineering and science faculties here have nuclear sciences specialties, and 2 kilometers away from the Daba nuclear plant location, the country's first nuclear technical school stands. Here, the Egyptian labor needed for this technology are being trained.
After announcing the registration for the school, we've received 1,800 students who fit the criteria. We only need 75. We've added an IQ test for the filtration process, and then some physical fitness and psychological checkups. That's all to ensure that we have the very best of the Egyptian students.
On an 8 acres of land with 9 buildings and 15 classes, this school is equipped with all necessities students need. From dorms to labs equipped with the technologies needed for their training, around $5 million have been invested in the Daba Advanced Technical School for Nuclear Power Technologies.
3 ministries have collaborated to establish this first-of-a-kind school in the Middle East: education, electricity and power, and military production. This is a peaceful nuclear plant. However, we need the expertise of the military production ministry to install and manufacture hardware and labs needed.
This educational facility accepts middle school students who score over 95% in mathematics, science and English. The 5 years educational program has a capacity of 375 students. Daba's nuclear plant is expected to require 1,500 workers.
We want this school to become the influencer of caliber in future nuclear projects in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia is already talking about establishing its first nuclear power plant. UAE is expected to follow. All such projects hopefully will depend on Egyptian labor.
The Daba nuclear power plant is a $25 billion project. It will include 4 electric generators with a total production of 4,800 megawatts. Egypt is currently studying to build a second nuclear power plant closer to its western border with Libya. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
To South Africa now, where China's commitment to fund an African student scholarship program is expected to help cultivate the next generation of leaders. The move has been broadly welcomed by many in academia, especially in the Western Cape. CGTN's Travis Andrews has this report.
As part of an important relationship based on mutual growth and prosperity, China has made education one of the fundamental pillars of its relationship with Africa. And in a commitment some academics have called ambitious and encouraging, China will be providing 50,000 scholarships to African students, which is more than anything that has ever been seen.
This is bigger than the total number combined of scholarships from all 28 countries in the European Union, and far larger than the United States with, for example, its Fulbright scheme. So that's a much needed gaining of skills for Africa's new generation of professionals and business.
The scholarship program will provide critical skills at tertiary level in areas such as bioscience, renewable energy, aquacultural studies, as well as vocational training. South Africa's close political partnership with China may also help boost its space science ambitions, but so can the rest of the continent.
We are both members of BRICS, which includes a space cooperation dimension, and of course we also in FOCAC and the Belt Road Initiative, and China might well think of offering sharing of data of satellite images for free, because African countries are always pressed by foreign exchange squeezes.
The scholarship also allows for the training of 1,000 high-caliber students in 10 social and developmental workshops for broader access to skills and knowledge. But students from marginalized communities may benefit the most due to the financial burden the bursaries alleviate. For many, studying in China has already provided a host of benefits.
In China, like their engineering level, it's next level. And even with operations management, I know with them, they work well. And I've seen students from our school, CPUT, doing business and doing operations management, actually going to China. And I've seen how it has changed their lives.
For now, though, Chinese and African universities have also been encouraged to build new partnerships so that the scholarship program has a platform with which it can grow to include even greater educational exchanges. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Nigeria's Medical Association is warning of catastrophic consequences if the current exodus of medical practitioners continues. More than 2,000 each year reportedly seek better employment overseas. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam has more.
Nigerian doctors carrying out a specialized surgery in the capital Abuja, but they make for a shrinking fraction of locally trained medical practitioners working in the country. Nigeria's Association of Medical Doctors says out of the 72,000 doctors registered under the association, only 27,000 are practicing in Nigeria. Close to 50,000 have migrated for better pay in Britain, the US and Canada. And the trend is exerting severe strain on the country's healthcare system.
20% of the doctors servicing over 70% of the people living in the rural area, while 70% of doctors who stays in the urban area service 30% of people. So at the rural area, we have a ratio of up to 1 to 20,000 people, and that is grossly inadequate.
Nigeria falls far below the WHO recommended patient-to-doctor ratio of about 600 patients to a doctor. Its current national average stands at 1 doctor to 5,000 patients, and the consequence of that is not difficult to see. For instance, 2,300 children die on a daily basis from preventable diseases, and 145 women die every day from pregnancy or birth-related cases. To reverse the trend, the Medical Association is urging the government to increase funding for the health sector.
In many states, they are not paying regularly. In those that they are paying, the money that they are paid is abysmally low, and there is nothing that will make them motivated to do the work. For example, Abia State is owing its doctors up to 11 months. And how do you think those doctors will want to work?
Nigeria is a signatory to the 2001 Abuja Declaration, which recommends the health sector to receive 15% of annual budgetary allocations for member countries. But almost 20 years on, it's still struggling to meet that target. President Buhari's administration has been talking increased spending on health, but it's yet to hit the 4% mark annual budgetary allocation to the sector. Kelechi Amekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
All the business news coming up for you after the break, including Kenya's biggest lender by assets, KCB Group, injects nearly $9 million into its East African markets. And it's only a matter of days until MTN Nigeria joins the country's trillion naira club. More details on that, what that means, after this short break.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Kenya's biggest lender by assets, KCB Group, has invested an additional $8.95 million in its Tanzania and Rwanda units to boost its share capital. The Rwandan subsidiary operates 14 branches with a cumulative investment worth $21.7 million. It's received a new capital investment of $3.8 million. In December, the Tanzanian subsidiary received $5.1 million, raising its total investment to $34.6 million. KCB believes economies like Rwanda and Tanzania have demonstrated the capacity for higher returns. The bank plans to further grow its opportunities in the region's financial sector. As MTN Nigeria prepares to list on the Nigerian Stock Exchange later this week, the stock is expected to dive straight into the Trillion Naira Club. Also known as the TNC list, it's an exclusive club made up of stocks that are the most valued in the country, at least $3 billion. Stocks in the TNC are Dangote Cement, valued at $5.3 billion, Nestle, $3.3 billion, and Guarantee Trust Bank at $2.8 billion. Both GDP and Nestle can be booted out of this club if their share price falls below 10% and 20% respectively. Analysts believe MTN might be listed at a share price of 90 naira, and going by its volume of shares of over 20 billion, its market cap could be in the region of $4.9 billion, just under Dangote Cement's valuation. Staying with Nigeria, as of Tuesday, citizens seeking to renew their visas to go to the United States must now attend visa interviews like first-timers. This means visa applications will no longer be accepted by DHL in Nigeria. All applicants seeking a non-immigrant visa to the US must apply online and will be required to appear in person at the US Embassy. The new rule comes after the United States Embassy in Nigeria suspended its Dropbox service. The embassy says that it's suspending interview waivers for renewals indefinitely. Energy experts are expected to gather in Cape Town this week for the annual African Utility Week and Power Gen Africa Expo. The aim is to exchange ideas on the energy sector in sub-Saharan Africa. Organisers say African Utility Week has become a not-to-be-missed session and provides an invaluable discourse around energy security. CGTN's Rennie Delcam has more.
Around 10,000 power professionals working in the water and energy sectors are expected to connect, talk, share and network in Cape Town for the next 3 days. Their main focus is on tapping into solutions to help improve the living and working conditions of millions of Africans by stimulating economic growth on the continent.
You recall that last year our President Cyril Ramaphosa set a target of more than $100 billion of investment in South Africa in the next few years. So energy plays a very critical role in that investment drive. That is why we are pushing and supporting and rallying behind that call by the President to ensure that energy is also a catalyst for that investment and growth in South Africa.
80% of the South African economy is in private hands. So it's of strategic importance for the South African government to partner with the private sector to ensure that it creates a climate conducive to investment and energy security.
When we talk about energy security in South Africa, we need to have a broader horizon to look at SADC as a whole. That is why Ministers of Energies in 2018 started a process of developing a gas master plan so that we can take advantage of those huge finds of gas in Tanzania as well as in Mozambique to ensure that this gas must benefit the whole of the Southern African market of more than 200 million residents.
If you come here and we have a clear plan what we want to do, that gives you an avenue and a room to hear from totally different people. It's a great engagement of South African and the continent professionals on energy and water.
The 3-day-long African Utility Week conference and trade exhibition ends on Thursday. Renée Dalcom, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Now for the escalating trade war between China and the US. The trade talks between the two largest economies in the world seem to have reached an impasse, and it started to have an impact on global markets. How will China deal with the situation? Here's what China's foreign ministry has to say.
China has never wanted a fight. That's the consistent tone of its stance on a trade war. A foreign ministry spokesman reaffirmed this after China took countermeasures against the most recent U.S. tariff hike.
Last week, the U.S. threatened to raise the tax rate on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods from 10% to 25%. After that, the Chinese delegation still went to the U.S. for negotiations, and the responsible move showed the maximum sincerity to solve the problem. However, some people in the U.S. seem to have misjudged this situation and underestimated China's determination and will to defend its own rights and interests. They continued asking for exorbitant prices. The Chinese side must explicitly reject it and resolutely oppose it.
But the U.S. claims that if China doesn't do a deal, it will lose out because foreign companies there will be forced to relocate. Geng's message to Washington: we don't need your concern. And he spelled out why. According to the World Bank's Business and Environment Report for 2019, China's business environment ranking has increased by 32 places. According to the 2019 China Business Environment Survey, released by the American Chamber of Commerce in China, nearly 80% of respondents said that China's investment environment is improving or staying the same. 62% of companies regard China as the top or top 3 global investment destination. According to the statistics of relevant Chinese departments, in 2018, there were more than 60,000 new foreign-funded enterprises in China, an increase of nearly 70%. Last September, ExxonMobil, America's largest oil company, decided to build a large-scale, wholly owned petrochemical project in China. And in January of this year, ground was broken in Shanghai for the first overseas factory of the U.S. automaker Tesla.
In which country the company chooses to invest in or be a business partner, the commercial decisions will be naturally decided by its own interests and market principles. It is not something that can be controlled by a few words of someone.
Geng stressed that China would continue to work hard to create a more stable, fair, transparent, and predictable business environment for foreign investors. When asked if President Xi Jinping would meet with Donald Trump at next month's G20 summit in Tokyo, Geng said the two leaders have been in constant contact through various means. but he gave no further details. 马克 with Yang Haijing for CGTN.
Tanzania has announced a new electronic auctioning system for allocating big game hunting blocks to tourism companies. It's in a bid to fight corruption in the country's hunting industry. The Tanzania Wildlife Management Authority will assign 26 big game hunting blocks next month in an electronic auction on the 10th of June. CGTN's Daniel Kijo has more.
The initiative is being spearheaded by the state-run Tanzania Wildlife Management Authority and is expected to start mid-next month and run for 7 consecutive days. An official statement from Tower has confirmed that currently there are about 26 vacant hunting blocks within game reserves, game-controlled areas, as well as open areas that are immediately available for auctioning. When developing its tourist hunting industry in the 1960s, Tanzania implemented the first block and quota system in Africa. It's known to have the widest range of game in the whole of Africa.
Like if you go to the west, they have specific species. If you go to the north, they have specific species. That's why I think that's what makes Tanzania unique. And the good thing is, in Tanzania, you get like mostly all the species somebody would actually want to hunt. That's why I think that's what makes Tanzania very unique in terms of hunting.
The existing system sold the blocks through tenders and allowed companies to own the blocks for up to 5 years. But now under the new system, eligible companies will be allocated a maximum of 5 hunting blocks for each of the different categories. Now, experts in the field say there might be a few challenges.
Some people might have the fear, okay, I've sold a Maasai Land safari. Now, what if I do not get the block that I've sold the safari for? What am I going to do? And I've already confirmed the safari, the client has booked his travel, and I've already got some deposit. Now what's going to happen?
Hunting is part of the country's wildlife conservation strategy and a requirement for its long-term survival. So conservationists and hunters alike are keen to see how this system will work. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania.
Las Maravillas du Mali were once considered pioneers for their unique blends of Cuban and African music. Now, half a century later, they're on tour once again. Susan Mongeli reports.
Les Maravillas du Mali might be the most influential world music band you've never heard of. Pioneers blending the sounds of Cuba and West Africa. After 50 years out of the limelight, Les Maravillas are back again. Their story began during the height of the Cold War. A group from Mali sent to Havana by their government a form of musical diplomacy.
Es así como yo aprendí a hacer los arreglos.
There I learned how to arrange music and play with the Cuban musicians.
Música cubana.
You learn Mozart, Chopin, Beethoven, Bach in school, but you learn Cuban music on the streets with the musicians.
Es en la calle con los músicos.
That is where I learned to arrange music.
De música.
Their first record was a huge hit back in Mali. The track Rendezvous chez Fatimata was played across Africa. But after that, Les Maravillas disappeared, a coup ending their dreams of stardom. Bonkana is the only surviving member, but joining him is a new lineup.
J'ai fait quelques titres dans la musique mandingue.
I'd already made a few tracks using Mandinka music, but with Cuban rhythms, and they worked well. So I wanted to join him, and I believe we've ended up with something really very great.
The band are midway through a tour playing in London. A major film about their story is due to be released and is likely to bring even more attention to a band nearly forgotten for half a century. Susan Mongeli, CGTN.
We've got all the sports news coming up for you after the break.